That night, when I entered the room, I realized something was wrong before I even saw anything. The silence was heavy, as if the air had stopped. I had come home from a 14-hour shift at the hospital, tired, with my head full of surgeries and reports, and just wanted to take a hot shower and sleep. But as soon as I closed the bedroom door, I felt like I wasn't alone. It was as if someone was waiting, holding their breath. The lamplight was low and the rain was hitting the window hard, creating a steady rhythm that should be relaxing, but that night it only increased my tension. I'm 52, a neurosurgeon in Seattle, used to dealing with extreme situations. I know how to recognize when something is not right. I've spent decades reading micro-expressions, bodily reactions, and details that other people don't even notice. But none of this prepared me for the scene I found when I turned my face. My wife was standing there with her back to the door holding a baseball bat. It was not an innocent gesture, it was no joke. She turned slowly and looked straight at me. Her eyes had no hesitation. They were cold, calculated, as if they had already spent hours imagining that situation. I didn't say anything. I stood there with my hand on the doorknob trying to understand which version of it I was facing. Because that was definitely not the woman who, years ago, talked about building a life with me. This was someone determined to finish something in a way that she considered advantageous. She lifted the bat a few inches, just enough to make it clear what she intended. Her voice came out firm without any trembling, as if she had practiced that in the mirror, and he said, "It will only look like self-defense." Those words hit me hard. Not because I was afraid of what was coming, but because at that moment I realized that she really believed that it would make sense. She thought she could stage a situation in which I would be the aggressor, and she would be the brave victim who defended herself. I was silent, not because I was paralyzed, but because inside me something screamed. It was the mixture of indignation, sadness, and a kind of internal alert that only appears when you realize that someone who has been sleeping next to you for years has become a real risk. She took another step, firmly, as if she wanted to corner me against the wall. I wasn't panicking. I wasn't nervous. I was prepared, and yet I didn't react. I didn't raise my hands. I didn't move forward. I didn't ask for explanations. I just watched. She always talked a lot, always tried to manipulate situations when she wanted something, but that night she was different. There was a goal, a conviction. It was as if she had decided that my fortune, my clinic, and everything I built were rightfully hers. I had been noticing strange behavior for months. Unauthorized access to my safe, searches on my computer about insurance policy values, deleted messages with a friend of hers who already had a criminal history, late-night outings without explanation, too many questions about my risky surgeries, about my rest hours, about my routines. All the pieces were there, and I, who have always been careful, never let anything go. But the most important thing was what she didn't know. I had installed a small camera in the room, hidden behind one of the books on the shelf, pointed at the door. It wasn't paranoia, it was prevention. I had seen too many signs, and I didn't want to depend on luck. He needed proof if anything happened. This camera was connected to an automatic server that started recording as soon as it detected motion. She took another step, and it was at that moment that it happened. A soft, almost imperceptible click echoed through the room. It was the camera activating the backup. A small sound, but it made her expression change in the same second. She froze. The bot began to shake in her hand. His face lost its firmness. The plan that seemed so perfect collapsed in front of her. She knew exactly what that click meant. He knew that, from that moment on, her every move was being recorded. He knew that he could not claim self-defense. I knew I wouldn't react in a way that could compromise the video. I knew I had been caught. The rain continued to hit the window, but what struck me was the silence that fell between us. She stood still, her club halfway up, breathing fast. I remained motionless, looking at her as if looking at a stranger. The woman I thought I knew had disappeared months earlier, and the one who was there now finally realized that she wasn't as smart as she imagined. And it was at that moment that something inside me changed. I stopped being a target. I stopped being someone trying to save a marriage. I became an observer. I became someone who knew exactly what I needed to do. I had proof. I was calm, and she was afraid. A fear that I had never shown before. I stepped aside, making way for her, and didn't say a word. There was nothing more to say. The situation spoke for itself. She lowered the club slowly, her hand shaking as if his weight had doubled, and there she understood everything, that she had lost, that their plan was over before it even began, that I was 2 steps ahead. When she finally put her cue down, I realized that for the first time since I met her, she didn't have a ready answer. My wife has always been nimble with words. She always created convenient versions of situations. She always managed to turn stories against me or anyone who confronted her. But there, in front of that click that exposed everything, she was left with nothing, only silence. And silence, coming from her, was always a sign that control had escaped. I didn't move. I just stared at her. After so many years of marriage, I knew exactly who she was when she was afraid. The way he breathed faster, how his eyes sought an escape route, how his fingers squeezed any nearby object. She looked around, as if trying to calculate if there was time to turn off the camera, pull the plug out, fake an emotional crisis, anything that would reverse the situation. But she knew it couldn't. The camera was connected to an external system, and she herself had already seen it months before when she moved it hidden in my office. Only now did he realize that that curiosity would have consequences. She tried to say something. He opened his mouth twice, but nothing came out. The shame was greater than the courage, and in a way, I understood, because in that room, where we so often sleep side by side, she had just revealed who she really was. I didn't have to hide it anymore. There was no way to disguise it anymore. The mask had fallen. I took a deep breath. My body was still tired from the shift, but my mind was clear. She was no longer a doubt, a suspicion, an intuition. It was a real problem, a danger inside my own home, and now I had proof, all the evidence he needed. She took a step back as if I was going to charge against her, as if he wanted to start staging the story he had planned right there. But I didn't move. I wasn't going to give her the chance to cheer anything. I knew that any action of mine would be used against me in the future, so I stood firm, still, like a fixed weight in that scene. This made her more nervous than any aggressive reaction would have left. In her mind, I had only 2 options: run away or fight. But she never understood who I really am. I am someone who analyzes before acting, someone who only makes decisions after being sure, someone who doesn't deliver ammunition to whoever is trying to destroy me. I learned this in hospitals, at discussion tables, in long surgeries where a hasty decision can cost a life. She looked straight at me, and I could see the exact moment she realized she wasn't going to be able to turn the situation around. Her face lost color. The shoulders dropped. The club, which had previously seemed like a serious threat, now looked like just a heavy piece of wood that she didn't know where to put it. She tried to hide it behind her leg, but it was too late. Everything had already been recorded. I walked to the dresser next to the bed, unhurried, not looking at her. I opened the drawer, took my phone, and placed it on the table. I didn't have to turn on the screen. The simple gesture made it clear that, if I wanted, I could call the police at that very moment. She realized this and retreated a little more until she leaned against the wall. Her panic was evident. Her eyes were beginning to fill with tears, but they were not true tears. They were tears of despair, of someone who saw an entire plan break apart. I sat on the edge of the bed. I didn't cross my arms. I didn't say anything. I just stood there, watching. And it was in that silence that things really began to change. Because she understood that I wasn't going to make a scandal. I wasn't going to lose my mind. I wasn't going to create a fight for her to use as a justification later. I was just going to let her face her own conscience. And this is a punishment that few people are prepared to face. She tried to compose herself. He ran his hand through his hair, wiped his face, took a deep breath, but his voice came out weak when he finally managed to speak. I said something like, "That's not what it seems." I almost laughed, because this sentence is the last way out of those who know they have been caught. She repeated louder, trying to regain firmness. "You're not getting it." Another classic, but I understood. I understood everything. I raised my hand, asking for silence, and it froze again. I didn't want explanations. Not at that time. Not when my body was still processing the fact that she entered our room armed and prepared to stage my death. I got up slowly, walked to the door, and pointed to the hallway. She widened her eyes in surprise. I didn't need to scream. I didn't need to push. He just needed to show the way, and she understood. He put the bat behind his back as if that would erase what he did, and left the room with short steps, looking back twice. When the door closed, I stood there, breathing. The room seemed smaller, more suffocating. The walls seemed to hold the echo of that night. The camera was still on, recording everything. I walked over to it, manually turned it off, and pulled out the memory card. I put it in my pocket and sat back on the bed. I needed to think carefully. It was not the time to act in anger. It was a moment of strategy. She was still in the house. I still had access to everything. She was still my wife, on paper. But from that moment on, she stopped being my partner. He became an unpredictable person. And unpredictable people can do anything when they realize they've lost control. I sat there for a few minutes, trying to organize my head. The rain was still heavy, as if it was cleaning everything outside while inside the house everything collapsed. I knew that night was going to change my life. It wasn't just a couple's argument, it wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a direct attack, thought out, prepared. And this requires a response. Not in the same tone, not at the same level, but it requires strategy. I have learned in all the years in the hospital that decisions made in the heat of the moment almost always come out too expensive. Then I took a deep breath and let the adrenaline ego down. I went to the bathroom, washed my face with cold water, and looked at myself in the mirror. He looked like someone else, not because of fatigue, but because of clarity. I no longer had doubts about what I needed to do. When I came out of the bathroom, I realized that the whole house was silent. Enough silence for me to hear even my own breathing. She was probably in the living room or guest room trying to figure out what would come next. She always thought she could predict my steps, but now she realized she never really understood how I work. I went down the stairs slowly. I didn't want to scare anyone, but I also didn't want to look vulnerable. I found her in the kitchen, sitting at the table, with her hands over her face. When he saw me, he raised his head quickly as if he were rehearsing an apology. But there was no apology that would solve what she did. She knew that. I knew that. She opened her mouth, ready to speak, but I raised my hand again. I didn't need to hear her version. At least not that night. I wanted facts, not emotional justifications. I sat in the chair in front of me and left the memory card on the table. She looked at it as if it were a radioactive object. I didn't say anything. I just left it there. The presence of that card spoke louder than any sentence could speak. She started with the phrases she always used when she was caught up in something. I was nervous. You don't understand what I'm going through. I just wanted to scare you. I lost control, all accompanied by calculated tears. I knew that pattern well, but this time I didn't fall. This time I just watched. Because honestly, anyone who walks into a room with a baseball bat isn't just nervous. Anyone who talks about self-defense has already crossed a line that has no return. When she realized that I wasn't going to react, she changed tactics. He began to try to reverse the situation as he always did. She said that I made her insecure, that I worked too much, that I was distant. I listened to everything in silence, but inside I just thought that none of these arguments justified what she tried to do. When someone gets to the point of planning a physical attack, any explanation turns to noise. I spoke the first sentence of the night only after 10 minutes of listening. And I spoke softly, firmly, without raising my tone. I said, "You've crossed a line from which there's no turning back." She froze, and I continued, "This house is no longer safe when someone who is supposed to protect me tries to hurt me." She tried to defend herself, but every sentence she uttered only confirmed that there was no way out. My calm tone made her more desperate than if I had screamed, because she knew how to deal with the scream, not silence. I got up and walked to the living room. She came after her, nervous, asking what I was going to do. I didn't answer. I took my jacket, my keys, the memory card, and my cell phone. She blocked the door, saying that she didn't want me to leave, that she needed to solve it there. I stood facing her and said, "I'm not going to argue with you at dawn, and I'm not going to stay in a house where I'm targeted." She cried harder, perhaps because she realized that losing control was the beginning of losing everything. I pushed her hand away from the door and left. I felt the cold air hit my face, and for the first time that night I could breathe for real. I got in the car, closed the door, and let the sound of rain fill the space. The memory card was in my pocket, insurance, intact, and with everything I needed to decide the next step of my life. I spent a few minutes inside the car just listening to the rain. It was as if each drop helped to clarify what I already knew. A man does not leave the house at night exhausted after a shift with no defined direction, unless he has reached the limit. And I had arrived. Not because of the argument, but because someone who was supposed to be a part of my life tried to put an end to it. I wanted to breathe away from her, far from the house that no longer seemed mine. So I started the car and started driving without an exact destination, following empty streets, passing through neighborhoods I knew by heart, looking for a place where I could think clearly. I ended up parking in the empty parking lot of the hospital where I work. Irony or not, this was the only place where I still felt completely in control. There, even tired, I knew exactly what to do. I walked in through the back door, greeted the night security guard with a wave, and headed straight to my office. The room was dark but familiar. I turned on the light and left the jacket on the chair. The silence there was different from the silence of the house. Here there was no threat. There was no one watching my every move. Here I could think without fear. I sat down at the table, took the memory card, and placed it on the keyboard. It was strange how such a small object carried such a great weight. My whole life, or at least the direction of it, was now inside that card. I could hand it over to the authorities. I could talk to a lawyer. He could ask for a restraining order. I could even do everything at the same time. But before any decision, I needed to understand why. Not that there was justification, but I wanted clarity on what led her to this point. Greed? Jealous? Pressure? Someone's influence? Or just the truth I didn't want to see before? She never loved me the way she said. I opened my laptop, but before watching the video, I let my head rest. The truth sometimes hurts, but the lack of it hurts more. As I waited, I thought about the signs ignored. I remembered the awkward conversations, the long absences, the out-of-turn questions. I remembered the day she asked, almost casually, how much my clinic was worth. I remembered the times he went through my drawers when he thought I wasn't looking. I remembered the message I accidentally found on her cell phone, talking about solving everything at once. I wanted to believe that it was my exaggeration, but it wasn't. As I thought, I heard footsteps in the hallway. They were light, known. The door opened slowly and a head appeared. It was Daniel, my resident of the night shift. He looked at me with surprise and asked if everything was okay. I just shook my head. He realized that it was not the time for questions. He left a bottle of water on the table and said he would be around if I needed it. That kind of quiet respect is rare, and that night, it meant a lot. When I was alone again, I put the card in the laptop. The video began to rotate. There she was, entering the room with the bat in her hand, looking around to confirm if I was alone, taking a deep breath before opening the door completely. The scene repeated itself in that small illuminated rectangle, and I felt a strong tightness in my chest. It was not shock. It was confirmation. Now there was no denying what happened. It wasn't my interpretation. It was not a misunderstanding. It was a fact. I ran my hand over my face and closed my eyes for a few seconds. Then I saved a copy of the video in 2 different locations, including an external server that I use for medical files. I knew I needed to have multiple copies. I couldn't risk losing anything. I took out my cell phone and opened the contacts. My lawyer was at the top of the list, but my finger was stuck on his name. It wasn't time to call. It was still dawn. I didn't want to make a decision driven by fatigue or fear. I wanted to make a conscious, firm, irreproachable decision. So I locked my phone, turned off the laptop, and leaned back against my chair. I knew what I needed to do. Not at that time, but at dawn. When the head was clear and the emotions in place, when I was ready to face everything with the same firmness that I face a risky surgery, and in that empty office, at 3 in the morning, I finally accepted that the marriage was over. Even before that night, what was left now was not to save anything. It was to protect what was still mine and make sure she never had a chance to try something like it again. As the sun began to rise, the light poured in through the cracks in the office blind. I barely realized that I had spent the whole night there. The silence of the hospital at that time always brought me peace, as if the world was pausing before exploding into motion again. But that morning, peace had another meaning. It was the end of an old life and the beginning of a new one. I knew that when I got up from that chair, things would never be the same. I grabbed my jacket, memory card, and laptop. I closed the office door behind me and walked down the empty hallway. Daniel was sitting in the nurse's station, almost asleep, and he raised his head when he saw me. He asked if I wanted coffee. I thanked him, but said I needed to go. He wished me luck without knowing anything, and that simple gesture showed me that there were still worthwhile people in my life. I drove to my house slowly, observing the streets that were slowly gaining movement. It was strange to think that, while everyone was starting another ordinary day, I was about to close an entire chapter. When I parked in the garage, I was quiet for a few seconds, looking at the front door as if it were a boarder. I wasn't afraid of her, not after what happened, but he was aware of the weight of the conversation that would need to happen. Upon entering, I found the silent house. She was sitting in the living room, looking at her own hands. She looked small on the couch, like someone who had spent the whole night trying to predict what would come next. When he saw me, he got up quickly, as if he wanted to run to me, but stopped halfway. She no longer had the security she had the night before. I had no control anymore, and he knew it. He asked where I was. I just replied that I needed to think. She began a prepared speech, full of tears, explanations, promises, and broken sentences. He said he was under pressure, that he didn't know what he was doing, that he had lost himself, that he never wanted to hurt me. I listened to everything without interrupting. Then, when she finished, I spoke with the calm that I always maintained in the worst moments of my life. He said, "What you have done is not a mistake, it's a decision." She tried to deny it, but I lifted the memory card. This ended any attempt at manipulation. She put her hands on her face and cried harder. Maybe it was remorse. Perhaps it was desperation to realize what he had lost. But for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like consoling. It wasn't cruelty. It was just the end of a cycle in which I carried more weight than I should. I said I needed her to leave the house. Not in that minute, but on that day. She tried to argue, saying that she had nowhere to go, that she needed time. I replied that I would give it time, but the decision was made. There was no more marriage. There was no more confidence. And above all, there was no more security while she was there. She accepted without discussion, perhaps out of fear of what the video represented, perhaps because he understood that, if he insisted, he could get out of the situation worse than he already was. While she was packing some things, I sat at the kitchen table and took a deep breath. I didn't want revenge. He never wanted to. I just wanted to protect my life, my career, and everything I've built with so much effort. When she left, closing the door behind her, the house became so quiet that it almost looked different. It was not empty. It was relief. It was as if the danger had been torn from within the walls. I walked to the bedroom, looked at the place where it had all happened the night before, and felt a certainty I had never felt before. Sometimes the person you think you know best is the very one you need to let go of first. I knew I would still have to deal with lawyers, difficult conversations, and paperwork, but that didn't scare me. I had proof. I had time. I had control, and she had lost all the arguments she thought she had. As I closed the curtain, I realized that the world outside was the same, but mine had changed completely. And as painful as it was to admit, it was a necessary change, a change that saved my life. And that gave me a real chance to start over.